Welcome back. We earlier talked about this very important day in history, the war of the 6th of October 1973, that marked an important day in our calendars and in the calendars of every person in the whole world and changed the course of history. That important day amazed the whole world after only 6 years of the war and defeat of the June 1967. Today, we remember that great day and the glorious days. We're delighted to be joined with Admiral Ashraf Rifat, and former commander of the Egyptian Navy. And also, he had a great role in that significant war. He's going to talk about his memories about this war and tell us what happened in detail according to his own view. Good morning, Admiral.
Good morning.
Good morning and happy 6th of October. I want to start off with you. You can give us your memories and your experience that of the days that followed the 1967 war up until the 1973.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you for bringing up this subject, because it is something I lived through in the last 30 years. So I was thinking and dreaming and reading all about naval warfare and so on. Now, there is an important point I'd like to present. People look at the war as a matter of destruction of ships, shooting down planes, crossing the trenches, getting killed when you go over the other side. All this is the last stage of war. War is a very serious matter and needs a lot of consideration, proper discussion, analysis, and it's very dangerous for someone to go into war unprepared. People think that the president has the right to declare war. He has theoretically the right, but to take a decision to make war, he must listen to reports from all the responsible people. Responsible people not only on the military side. If there is a war on, you have to look about supplies, how you got to treat the people of Egypt, for example. What about fuel, and what about electricity? Have you got reserve sources of power or not? So there are many things. What about hospitals? You'll treble the number of people who are going to hospital. So you find the Minister of Health is involved, Minister of Transport is involved, the whole government is involved. So before you say, I want to make war, you must listen to all these people. And then there is the foreign minister. Foreign minister must evaluate the situation. What will happen relative to other countries? What about our neighbors, the people who are cooperating with us? What about other nations? What about the people who have bad intentions toward us? So all what I want to point out now, that what you see in the television and in the cinema and in the papers is the final stage of war. But the actual war has its principles. You'll be surprised to know that 1,000 years ago, a Chinese general, Sun Tzu, I think it was his name, he put down the principles of war. Very few, 10 or 12 items, but they are still valid till now. And what makes me really surprised is that people go to war and they don't follow these principles. For example, the question of secrecy. You have to be secret and keep your plans under cover. The next thing is to make sure that the mission you give to the troops, or whatever force it is, ships or planes, or must be within the capability of that force. If you give a certain battalion or a regiment or whatever, or flotilla, a mission that is outside its abilities, well, you can be sure you're going to be defeated. So you shouldn't give it in the first place. What you give to a general must be within the scope of his forces. All these have to be taken about. And then there is other things that you have to bear in mind. You must have camouflage planning so that the enemy will get, he'll know you're trying to cook something, but you have to give him something to see, because if you just stay quiet, he's going to look more and more and more. The best thing is to give him the wrong information.
And did this happen in 1973?
Wait about 1973. I want to tell you about 1967. All the principles of war that are known were not followed. First of all, let's say surprise. Surprise is one of the most important items. You must surprise your enemy so that he's not ready. Television and the radio and the papers and the magazines are all saying, Hanharib, months before the war. The next thing is deployment of troops. How can you say that you're deploying secretly when the tanks actually went around Medan al-Tahrir and from there to Suez? It means you have exposed yourself. And all the other items, as far as I can see, were not followed. And that's why there was a defeat. You can't fight the war unless you follow the right principles. There are 3 or 4 items. The strategic points, which is you have to put it in what is the war going to be relative to the other countries, and who will be with you, who will be against you. The next thing is that there is putting a decision on how you're going to do the war. This has to be worked out by the people in operations, the Director General of Operations, in cooperation with the chiefs of operation in the Air Force and the Navy and the Army and so on, have to give their own impression. And when he listens to the report, he can pick up the things that are within their capability and put it in the general plan. This thing is called operational planning. Now we mentioned strategies at the high level. The next thing is operational planning, how to make all these things as orders, as mission orders, as information about your enemy and so on. The last thing you have to do is the actual, what you call the tactical part of the war. How are you going to fight that war, and who's going to do the fighting, and the different missions that each part will carry out. Now, when, as I mentioned, 67, everyone knows that the whole thing was carried out in an unprofessional way.
Right.
Why this happened, I don't know, but what I can tell you is that the result is obvious. We couldn't fight the war.
Right. Admiral, allow me to come in here and go back to the 1973, or move on to the 1973 or 6th of October War. You were the chief of operations of the naval operations. You participated in the preparations, which is a very important step, and you participated also in the war.
Yes.
So tell us about the preparations, because after the war, years after the war, there were several stories that spread. The credit went to the wrong people. There were people who led the foundation or set the foundation of this real glorious war. Their names were never mentioned, and other people took the credit. Is that story true? Tell us the real story.
The reason I don't know, but I can tell you that it is true, because I'm one of these people. I was chief of operations for maybe 5 years, and I planned the October War completely from the beginning of the war of attrition till the war itself.
Who was the mastermind?
And I found all the heads of operation and the other services were given medals. نجمة الشجاعة, نجمة حاجة كده.
Kind of the star Courage Star. Really.
Oh, found my name missing. But what I want to tell you is that my idea came from a very small incident. I was in headquarters with the General, with the Admiral Fuad Zikri, who was head of the Navy, and he was getting the final briefing from Field Marshal Ahmed Ismail, the Minister of Defense.
A great
He
man.
told me come with me in case he asks me something I don't know. بخليك واقف جنب الباب يعني. Anyway, when he was leaving, I met him. Is there anything? He said, لا مفيش حاجة يعني كله تمام. Then the door opened and Ahmed Ismail looked out from the door and shouted, Zikri, be sure and remember we're going to fight this war without aviation. طبعا I heard this. It struck me as something that I must put in my mind and change all the concept of operations in the Egyptian Navy. You can't fight a war in 1973 without full cooperation with the Air Force. Mm-hmm. If the Minister of Defense tells you you're going to fight without aviation, it's rather difficult question. So, well, anyway, I studied the problem and I came out. Well, in that case, I must operate outside the range of Israeli airplanes. In that case, I mustn't put any surface ships in a place where they can be attacked by aircraft. The result of this thinking in my mind came to the conclusion you have to change the idea of tactical war into strategic war. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got the idea of putting ships outside the range of Israeli planes and to use other things that can't be attacked by planes, submarines, mines, things like that. Make full use of that, which I did. And from that idea, Bab el-Mandab Straits came to my mind because I had actually served in Yemen as head of the Egyptian force in the Red Sea for the time of the Yemeni War, and I was familiar with the area and so on. And I knew that from in our intelligence that Israel depends on oil coming from through Bab el-Mandab, and the origin was Iran at that time. They were on good terms. The other source was our own oil well that was captured inside the Gulf of Suez. So the Israelis thought it was a nice idea to help themselves to oil and not pay anything, and take it from our own oil well. So they had no reserve inside Israel because they thought there's a whole well under our control, and if we need oil, we can just go and take it. So I said we'll cut off that as well. The result was really very effective. And I had to divide myself into different ideas. Bab el-Mandab, of course, is a narrow passage, and the ships have to pass through it on one hand. On the other hand, this is an international waterway, and if you start stopping neutral ships, you're going to go into trouble with America and England and France and God knows what else. So I had to work that one out. So I did a bit of planning, and I changed the idea. I put the destroyers to patrol and to warn the ships that there is a war zone in the middle of the area between Bab el-Mandab and the Gulf of Suez. Now, according to international law, you can close bits of the areas for training and for operations. You see, this area is dangerous for navigation. Mm-hmm. And that was being performed in Bab el-Mandeb. When a ship came, asked him, where are you going? He says, I'm going to, say, Eilat or somewhere else. There is an area closed for navigation for your own safety. So you can't, you have been warned, and do what you like. If you want to go in, go at your own risk.
The
Now
risk is
you
yours.
can be sure that most merchant navy captains don't want to get killed in war. They're not in fighting ships. So anyone who was given this warning went round the Cape of Good Hope and took the long way home.
So I wanted to ask you about the day of the 6th of October, 1973. Where were you exactly? How did it go for you? How was it like?
Oh, that's right. It goes into the actual tactical planning. All these things were put into plans inside.
So you knew before that the war was going to happen on that day, at that time?
Of course. I was the only one who knew what date the war will start and at what time. I met General Gamsi, and I told him at the time of start of war, I want the submarines to be off Port Sudan and the destroyers to be in Bab el-Mandeb. And these take time to go, so unless I know when, they won't go. But I'll cover it with some camouflage. This was very complicated camouflage, and started maybe 6 months before the war. First of all, we got the naval attaches, and we spread the story. The submarines are in very poor condition because the canal is closed and we can't get them to our dockyard. We have to send them outside to Pakistan or India to be fitted. And if you can get us any other ideas, give us offers. And same for the destroyers also. So we started shipping spare parts on big crates, Egyptian Navy Karachi, spare parts.
Right.
On foreign ships. So this idea was
Right. General Ashraf, we need also to talk about the real credit, go back again to the real credit behind this war. A great deal of part of this war goes back to the morale, the high morale of the soldiers. How did that come from? Especially that you came from the 1967 war that was completely, crashed. How did you raise the morale of the soldiers and the officers to be able to do that amazing crossing of the Bar-Lev line?
I think the defeat of 67 woke up everyone like a bad dream. They got the shock of their lives, that everything was being done in the wrong way. Then
it must have been a very tough years between 67 and 73.
And then, you see, the important point is that the Nasser Academy was opened. And this was manned by the Soviet Union with Russian experts. And all our senior officers had to go and attend. All the people you hear about and who were in the October War had to do this course. I went and attended that course, although I had already done staff and command course in Russian. But this was even higher. This was more about strategic planning, operational art, camouflage, and how to cover the certain things and so on. So I think the important point is everybody took their work serious, or should we say seriously? Otherwise, you catch me out on my English. So I think everybody tried to do something that will be different from what happened. Because the army really it wasn't their fault. I mean, you can't put people in a situation where they can't do anything. and then say that the army failed or something. When they got the proper training, when they had the proper plan, everything worked out all right.
Absolutely. Well, Admiral Ashraf Rifat, former commander of the Egyptian Navy, thank you so much for joining us, and we are proud to have you here as a hero of the 1967-1973 war and up until today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that I have a chance to explain to people what happened. And I tell you the truth, I have been in all the wars, even 48 when I was still a cadet. War of Palestine started, and we were sent out to the ships as what rank called midshipman. Midshipman means طالب ممتاز يعني. And we had to do the role of officers at that young age, at 16 and so on. So I can say that I had plenty of experience of combat and the difficulty of it, but I will stress from now on, for the last time, that war is not a game. It must be taken seriously. It has to be prepared for by people who know what they're doing. And then there is the training for this war, similar missions. And when these people are ready, you have to use surprise and camouflage and trickery so that you can start the war without anyone expecting it. Then you get the benefit of the surprise.
And that's what happened in 1973.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure.
Do they want to have other looks at pictures?
Oh, sure. Lastly, we can look at the pictures really quick.
Who's doing
Some history.
Yeah.
The pictures.
Came out?
That was former President Anwar Sadat and
Former President
the ousted
Hosni Mubarak
president,
and who else?
Sadat and Ghamassi and myself.
And you on the far right.
And on the far right,
Great memories.
that's the head of the Alexandria Naval Base, Naguib Sharaf.
Great.
This picture is rather important. And the fact is that was the visit of Sultan Qaboos of Oman.
Uh-huh.
And as you can see, there is President Sadat, and myself behind him, and Ghamassi and Hosni Mubarak having a little squabble. Hosni Mubarak wanted to accompany the Sultan, and Marshal Ghamassi told him, listen, this is the Navy, and the commanding officer of the Navy is Ashraf, and he is the host, and he should accompany the guest. So go back to the
Great memories. Admiral Ashraf Rifat, former commander of the Egyptian Army. It was a pleasure having you in the studio, and thank you so much. And happy 6th of October.
I want to show you a ship.
Last picture. Oh,
Amazing
wow.
ship.
That's massive.
That's one of the frigates that were in '67.
Right?
And this one is a larger ship, was the headquarters of the formation that was controlling Bab al-Mandab,
Right.
Massive.
a ship called the Miyat.
Right.
The other one was called Tariq.
Wow.
Right.
Well, this Tariq is,
Thank
you don't need to record it, but it's important because in 1967, the only thing the Israelis could do was they couldn't come by ships because they had a very good coastal defense, gunnery and missiles, and also had destroyers outside. So at that time I was the commanding officer of destroyers. I decided that they can only bring in the frogmen. And I was operating war routine. Nothing had happened. No one told us anyone's going to attack, but I followed the standard regulations for putting the radar in action, putting the men in action station. And then I got a report that a small target appeared 6 or 7 miles off Alexandria.
Right, unfortunately,
You have time is up.
that are very valuable memories that you're sharing here. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have
I'm
you.
glad that-
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us.
Ashraf, Refa, thank you very much. And we hope
Important
that
point
we
is
live
that
to commemorate
I
more
don't
memories.
want it
with
to
us.
be monotonous. Otherwise, you get fed up of the whole thing.
No, it was great. It was very
Exactly. Not
valuable
at all.
memories. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
and
coming
thank
over.
the TV for allowing me this time. I know that your time is
No,
well-
your time is
well
valuable to
scheduled.
us.
Thank you for giving us some of your time. But right now we're going to go to your report, that's Reem Noor's report, and
Yeah.
she's going to talk more about the 6th of October in the coming report. She's going to take a flashback.
I talked to people on the street, and
She met
they
people.
actually lived through the 1973 war. So let's go to this report and see what it was like for them during 1973.